for coming to join us for this event. My name is Karim El-Gandhi, and I have the honor of moderating and speaking at this exciting event about the energy transition both in Turkey and the wider Eastern Mediterranean. The idea of this panel, just to give you a sense of why we're here, is mostly in response to this latest twist and turn, if you like, in the history of climate and energy in the Eastern Mediterranean region. The Eastern Mediterranean, historically, in many of our minds, is associated with conflict over land, tension over maritime borders, and it's also associated with conflicts over where do the pipelines go, and more recently also by fault lines created by interest in maximizing energy deposits, natural gas deposits found within its waters. But the region is also waking up to a new reality, which is why we're here. The natural gas deposits found in the Eastern Mediterranean might not have a buyer outside of the region. The EU is unlikely to buy that natural gas anyways, as it tries to decarbonize away towards 50% less emissions by 2030 and 100% less emissions by 2050, 55 rather, by 2030. The gas is also very likely to be very expensive to be sold to Asian markets as LNG. So we could see that you could say that the pipeline diplomacy in the Eastern Mediterranean region is already dead, even before it has actually started, in giving way already to this new climate world, or this new world of climate change. Also, the emerging research on the subjects relating to climate change impacts in the Middle Eastern region, and in the East Med region, and also the latest extreme weather events that we have seen across the East Med have also concentrated minds perhaps a little bit, and allowed our officials to become more cognizant of the fact that climate change impacts will affect their economies, specifically on some of the critical sectors such as tourism, as well as agriculture. So in response to that, we've seen a development in terms of climate policy and also energy transition. And these developments, both in Turkey and in the East Med region, have raised more questions than they have answered, in fact. So questions like, how does the energy transition relate to the climate policy? How does it affect the current geopolitics within this region? How does it affect the supply side and the demand side for energy? What opportunities are there for collaboration between the countries of this region, especially between Turkey and the East Med? So to start talking about this, I will go first. Just because I will want to set the scene on the current state of the energy transition within Turkey and also within the East Med. My name is Karim El-Gandhi. I'm an associate fellow with Chatham House, and I'm also focusing mostly on climate policy as well as the role of cities, both in terms of sustainability and resilience in cities. Next up will be Elif Selin Çalık, who will focus on energy diplomacy, current energy diplomacy in Turkey, as well as the potential for the future in the context of this new energy transition that we'll be talking about. So Elif is a journalist and academic based in London, and her focus mostly focuses on the politics of energy politics and also Turkey's foreign policy. She's also a climate and a human rights activist, and she's the vice director of the International Council for Diplomacy and Dialogue. She holds an MA from the International University of Sarajevo and a second MA in global diplomacy from SAWAS here at the University of London. Next up will be Dr. Jawad El-Kharraz, who will talk to us about energy transition outside of Turkey, mostly on the supply side of energy, but in the countries of the Arab countries around the Eastern Mediterranean. The reason he will do that is because he is the executive director recently appointed for the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. He leads its strategy implementation, and for those who don't know, the center, just as it's called, aims to promote renewable energy and energy efficiency across the 17 members. All of them are Arab countries. Dr. Kharraz has both a master's and a PhD in physics from the University of Valencia in Spain. And last but not least, we will hear from Jennifer Lakey from the World Resources Institute, who will talk to us about developments in energy efficiency on the demand side, focusing only on Turkey. Jennifer is the global head of the global director of energy within the World Resources Institute, the WRI. She leads quite a large team and quite a global team all focusing on energy and policy in terms of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and energy access. Some of the projects you might have heard of, like the Building Energy Accelerator and the Zero Carbon Buildings for All Accelerator as well. She serves on the board of the World Green Building Council, for those who know such great organization, as well as the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance and the Global Coal Cities Alliance. Just as a note, after all these presentations, who should normally be within 10 minutes or so, we'll hope to have 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers, so please keep any questions you may have for the Q&A session. So, as I said, I will go first. Climate action and energy transition in Turkey and potential for collaboration is what I would love to talk about. And the reason I think this is important is because we've just recently seen this dramatic transformation in climate policy in Turkey. So Turkey has decided that it wants to implement a green development strategy, which includes a number of environmental measures, not just emissions reduction, but also forestation, sequestration, reducing waste, and also measures to improve water as well as a number of other city-based measures that I would leave to Jennifer to speak about. But on the center of this is this idea of emission reduction. Turkey wants to reduce its emissions by 100% by 2053. So again, mid-century. So it has 32 years to basically reduce its emissions to zero. And that is no mean task, given that Turkey's emissions are continuing to grow on just about every metric. So in order to do so, it will need to do quite a bit. It will need to absolutely transform its energy system. I'm sure you all know Turkey has grown in terms of its energy, in terms of its renewable energy supply over the last 10 years or so. It has tripled in terms of solar, wind, and geothermal, and has grown significantly if you take all renewable energy sources, including hydro as well. But to reach more than where it is, and currently it's around 52% of all electricity, it will need to do a lot more than that, to deal with the transmittance, to deal with the need for storage, and also to deal with the impacts of climate change itself, which have affected the generation of electricity from the hydro plants. Get this to work. Yeah, so I don't know why it's not showing up the rest of it, but in terms of growth, as I say, Turkey has already achieved many of these growth targets, but it's the final push that we're very concerned about, and we're concerned whether Turkey can make this additional push. But it's not just about electricity. We also have the existing supply. Turkey's coal is not gone away. Despite of the increase in renewable energy capacity, the coal is still growing, and there is more coal in the pipeline. And for this, Turkey to achieve its goal, by 2053, all those coal power plants will need to shut down. They could transform into something else initially, such as natural gas. But for now, in terms of 2053 target, we expect all of this to go. In the medium term, we could expect the recent Black Sea natural gas finds to increase the natural gas, so it could act as a transition fuel for, say, 2030, 2040, but that should take the place of coal, and by 2053, all of this should be gone, and to give way mostly to a renewable energy grid that is mostly dependent on renewable energy, if we are to meet that 2053 target. But that's not the only thing. Electricity is a small part of the pie. On top of this, we have lots of industries. Many of the Turkish industries, like cement, like aluminum, like steel, they depend on fossil fuels directly, and that will need to be substituted. And it cannot be electrified easily, so you'll have to find alternative sources, high temperature sources, if you like. So hydrogen will come into this picture very quickly if you need to transform those into something else, in the same way that you have the same problem in Europe. And on top of that, we'll need to deal with the water heating, but that's not a massive challenge in the case of Turkey, because Turkey is actually one of the world leaders. It has 15 gigawatts of capacity in terms of solar water heating already, in terms of rooftop solar heating. And then electrification of mobility. So that's another sector that needs to be electrified, as well as and then sourced from renewable energy sources. I'm sure you've heard there's efforts to manufacture a car, and should be online in a couple of years or so. in terms of production, but the idea that you need to electrify all mobility and then source that from renewables should be a no small feat. And of course, there will be a need for more energy efficiency. Renewables will not be able to deal with the current growing demand that we are currently seeing in Turkey, where year on year demand is growing and emissions are growing as a result of that. So the impact of this, which is the additional component that I want to talk about, the second part of my presentation, is that the change to Turkey's energy grid, the reduction in demand for natural gas, will basically allow Turkey to not want to import anymore. So the dynamics that we currently have between different countries competing over where to get their natural gas from and how is it going to get to Europe will all go somewhere else. And Turkey is not the only country that is actually transitioning away from natural gas. So you'll find that Turkey, which currently depends on some of its neighbors, or who shall not be named, in terms of getting its natural gas, will no longer be leveraged on by those neighbors, if you like. So it will have more energy dependence, and as a result, more political independence as well of that move away. So it's energy transition, mostly for sustainability, but can also provide resilience benefits, and it can provide energy independence on top of that. And that demand as well will also reduce Turkey's need to go out and find natural gas, both in the Black Sea, but also in the Mediterranean. And if you think about that, well, that will also help resolve some of this tension between the different exclusive economic zones that you have in Turkey and amongst its neighbors. So the need to establish those exclusive economic zones will become less pressing, given that the gas is actually not that required, and we're moving away. A number of the countries of this region are moving away from that, and that includes Egypt, includes Jordan, includes Israel as well. So that also leads to another point. Natural gas is a commodity over which you could fight and try and claim it in order to be able to commodify and sell it somewhere else. Renewables doesn't work that way. Renewables actually, once you have the resource, if you have enough sun or enough wind capacity, you could just develop it in the country. You can't actually have an argument over it. So in a way, it takes away that source of conflict, but also it allows an opportunity for collaboration. And that's a fascinating thing. If you create more interconnections between countries, the countries that have that interconnection will have better renewable energy if they are neighboring countries, because the interconnections help you deal with the intermittence, helps you deal with shifting peaks between the different countries. So all in all, renewable energy infrastructure, a regional renewable energy infrastructure, will lead to more peace and security between the neighboring countries through the interdependence that can happen as a result of this development. And on top of that, also creates a better potential for developing technologies such as hydrogen. One thing also that could help is that this East Mediterranean Gas Forum could become an Eastern Mediterranean Energy Forum. It's no longer about gas anymore, as a result of that reducing demand between these number of countries that I mentioned earlier, and the fact that there's no buyer for it anyways outside of domestic consumption within this region. So a new kind of gas forum will mean more countries that were not necessarily concerned about the baggage of the gas forum could join in. So that includes Lebanon, Syria, and of course Turkey, which has a lot to contribute to that. And finally, which is my final point, there's another layer to this. Much of the climate change impacts on this region are similar around the East Med. So if you look at the East Med here, you'll find the precipitation will drop mostly in the Mediterranean, but there is a common thread around this beautiful and ancient part of the world in the Eastern Mediterranean. So sharing some of the resources and also sharing some of the knowledge within the Eastern Mediterranean in terms of adaptation could also go hand in hand with this mitigation and renewable energy transition that we spoke about. So that could also create better conditions for collaboration and for our peace and security, as I say. And I think with that, without much further ado, I will hand over to Elif to talk to us about energy diplomacy in the East Med, and in Turkey and the East Med as well. Do you want to come here?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kerim. It's my honor today to present Turkey's Mediterranean policies, of course, but I would like to thank Jennifer, first of all. She came all the way from United States and joined us today. She's our colleague. Well, when I say energy diplomacy to my students in London at Greenwich University, they are always asking me, "Oh my gosh, Elif, this is so boring topic." Because energy is really, really artificial, and diplomacy is really, you know, the gentleman or woman with tie, and just trying to explain something without endless negotiations. So it is a frightening topic. They used to say like that. But after pandemic, after at the age of this COVID-19, they started to think about that. By the time being, of course, they realize that energy is really, really important issue, and because it affects their food quality, it affects their electricity bill, it affects even their fees, school fees. So they realize that really this collocation, energy diplomacy, is a huge, and it is really, really other than more important than other diplomatical issues, actually, because it directly affects your stomach, in a nutshell. So, and in a straight way. So this is energy transition. Maybe, sure. Thank you so much. I'm not good at this things. Sorry. You know, from James Watt to UK or global net zero emissions targets, I want to take this net zero emissions target. This is the transformation of natural from wool to coal, oil. This is the energy transformation path, let's say. So why we need actually energy diplomacy in a time of energy transition? First of all, it is very unique case because low carbon energy transition impacts the geopolitics of energy. You know, after Brexit, last couple of weeks ago, in front of my home, there's a petrol station. I woke up with very huge long queue, actually, because there was one day there was a very big huge petrol crisis, and people, honestly, sorry for my language, but from toilet paper crisis, we ended up with petrol crisis in London after Brexit. So this is very big geopolitical and very big, huge, unfortunately, it is dilemma, really. So secondly, bilateral energy diplomacy is a key foreign policy tool to manage geopolitical consequences of low carbon energy transition, of course. And thirdly, countries need to develop soft power as a type of cultural power and special bilateral diplomatic relations with their key strategic energy partners. Hydrocarbon exporting countries need bilateral relations that combine energy, investment, and technology and collaboration. I will open them, these things. So, energy transition tools, of course, renewable energy, electricity trade, natural gas supply, and nuclear energy. I want to pick natural gas supply because today's our topic is Eastern Mediterranean, of course. So this is EastMed's energy map. You can see. Yeah, it's no surprise that everyone in this region wants a bigger piece of pie, as much as they can get. For the most part, they've all claimed their shares, of course. Egypt, of course, has started to exploit its own gas reserves in 2008 in the Zohr region. So it is the biggest exploration drilling center in the East Mediterranean region. So Hungary, of course, European also very, very hungry, energy-hungry bloc, has been mounting to its reliance on Russian gas. They don't want to be relied on the Russian gas. So let's see why countries they are fighting in this small region. In 2010, there is one study. This is the potential of all gas potential, 122 trillion cubic feet. It's a research from United States Geopolitical Survey. So unfortunately we can't dismiss this number, because when you see the three largest consuming countries, gas consuming countries in 2018, you see that it is this 122 trillion cubic feet is enough for United States, only for United States, at least decade, 10 years. So that's why Eastern Mediterranean is really biggest energy playing center in the world. So what is the sticking point and what is the biggest obstacle in Eastern Mediterranean? I just want to quickly wrap up. And what is the biggest obstacle for building better energy transition policy in this region? Of course, Cyprus Rift. The main cause of friction is the Cyprus, because they were divided between Greek Cyprus and Turkish Cyprus. Turkish Cyprus is not recognized by international countries and United Nations as well. On the other hand, Greek Cyprus is European Union member. So there's a huge dilemma and rift, of course, in this region. Sometimes some military actions happened as well. Now it is a little bit, now we can see some negotiations. So there are some overlapping areas, these yellow areas, they are overlapping areas between Turkish continental shelf and Greek Cypriots license areas. So as my colleague Kerim, he mentioned, more than 10 countries, they signed East Mediterranean Gas Forum in 2019 in January. It is the first time, this is really a big signature. Palestine and Israel, in the world history, they signed an agreement for the first time, same agreement actually. The fight between Palestine and Israel. So what Turkey, as a diplomatic reaction, what Turkey did, Turkey's diplomatic answer for East Mediterranean Gas Forum was a signature, an agreement between Libya and Turkey, exclusive economic zone. So what does it mean, exclusive economic zone in maritime diplomacy? If you have 12 nautical miles in your territorial water, you can do some, you can say that you can decline that this is your exclusive economic zone area, and you can do some drilling activities in this area. So this is Turkey's continental shelf and Libya's continental shelf. Now they are doing some drilling activities in Libya's exclusive economic zone. So just to wrap up, I just want to say that why a skillful diplomacy need for energy transition in EastMed. There are a lot of reasons, of course. We are calling, in this region, we are calling the countries in a as a short-term CMCs. So they are Algeria, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, Syria, Tunisia, and Turkey, of course. So why we need my humble suggestion is, I think after all these discussions, after all these agreements, European Union and Turkey needs need an energy transition platform immensely and hugely and very quickly to make this region to make an energy hub, technological cooperation, because we don't have time to lose. Time is ticking, and unfortunately we can't reach emission targets if we still continue to deal with this kind of diplomatical issues, Cyprus issues, islands and other issues. So of course Russia continue their pipeline diplomacy. So this transition platform will reduce dependence on Russia, of course, and of course energy security as well. A couple of months ago, Turkey lost a lot of maritime soldiers in this region, and also Greek government they are losing. You know, the region is bleeding. Sorry, I couldn't be able to draw a rosy picture. I'm so sorry. So the other reason is focusing on clean energy, of course. So this new Mediterranean roadmap, not only Euro-Mediterranean perspective, but integral Mediterranean roadmap, will unlock the renewable energy potential in this region and will make the region energy transition hub. And if they can change their perspectives from Euro-Mediterranean perspective into the integral Mediterranean perspective. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, my colleague.
Yes. Thank you.
Maybe.
Thank you, Elif.
Yeah,
thank you. That was Mike wasn't.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Karim, for having me. Thanks, everyone. So I'm Jawad Al-Kharraz, the Executive Director of the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency in Egypt. It's sort of an intergovernmental organization based in Cairo with a diplomatic status. The objective of the organization is to enable and increase the adoption of energy efficiency, renewable energies practices in the Arab region. We are also officially the technical arm institutions for the League of Arab States Energy Department and the Arab Ministerial Council for electricity. Sorry. So the energy landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean region is undergoing significant challenges that are driven by critical factors. On the one hand, primary energy demand in the Eastern Mediterranean countries is expected to rise substantially over the next 25 years, driven by economic development, demographic growth, the rapid urbanization. It will pose a significant challenge to energy security. On the other hand, the Eastern Mediterranean region is confronted to the climate change challenge, as you know, like no other region in the world. Mitigating its intensity requires a radical shift to decarbonized energy scenario that we need to allow us to meet Paris agreements, commitments, or targets. However, Eastern Mediterranean countries still rely significantly on fossil fuels, which contribute massively to carbon emissions, as you know, with forecasts projecting the dominance of the fossil fuel-based energy mix for the next 20 years. So that's why we're talking here about the efforts of the country of the region in the sense of energy transition. I'm showing here the Arab Sustainable Energy Strategy 2030, which was adopted by the League of Arab States by 2018. It's focused on three pillars: increasing the share of renewable energy. So the share of renewable energy should reach 12.5% as average of the electricity generated. Second pillar is to improve energy efficiency. The primary energy intensity will improve more than 30%. And the third pillar is to ensure access to modern energy services. The entire Arab population will have complete access to electricity grid, and the per capita share of electricity will increase to 3,500 kilowatt hour, and the per capita share of final energy will increase to 1.4 million TOE. In terms of the market, of the renewable energy in the Arab region. So I can mention here that obviously renewable energy is now a mainstream, particularly in the power sector. Investments in the Arab countries over the past decade, in particular in solar and wind project, exceeded 17 billion US dollars. There is a clear commitment to embrace strong forward-thinking policies and capture the immense value of the renewable energy businesses and cross-border interconnections. And several renewable energy support policies and financial instruments have proven to be effective in the region. Examples are competitive bids or auctions for utility-scale projects, resulting in competitive electricity prices, electricity generated by renewables. Such prices are possible because of the excellent solar and wind energy potential, as you know, backed by some concessional finance coupled with policy measures to reduce the various risks and encourage investment. So in this regard, so there's some figures regarding different renewable energy. So we are talking about a total renewable capacities of 22.8 gigawatt. Here I show you the progress in the Arab countries in terms of per capita share of renewable energy capacities with hydro and without hydro, so hydropower. So we see that Jordan is first, and then followed by Morocco. So we have a huge effort by the countries of the region, in particular in Jordan, Morocco, Egypt, and UAE. The renewable energy targets in Arab countries, so we announced the targets by 2035 to more than 190 gigawatt. And the renewable energy business opportunities through the Arab region estimated at over 30% of the global solar and wind growth. Almost Arab countries, in particular also the Eastern Mediterranean countries, set some very ambitious targets in terms of renewables share in the mix of the energy mix. So we have, for example, Egypt, we're talking about 42% by 2035, like 55 gigawatt. In Lebanon, we're talking about 30% by 2030. In Palestine, 2% by last year. So I'm not sure, the next target what is, but there are definitely very ambitious targets you can see here in almost Arab countries. In terms of national energy efficiency action plans, which is actually an effective tool, we have 12 national targets. We have 17 national assigned entities for energy efficiency. We have 18 action plans, national energy efficiency action plans in different stages in different countries. We have 11 countries using those action plans templates, in particular Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, and Lebanon. You can see here some common measures adopted by the different countries, including setting indicative targets for energy efficiency, banning importation of inefficient lamps and equipment, spreading solar water heaters, etc., etc. In this table, I show you some the energy efficiency measures in the Arab indices. So there are some the different sectors. In particular, household, building, transportation, policy, industry. So there's some development in some countries. In some other countries, still is not mentioned explicitly in their indices reports. Obviously, there is a need for investment support. Either the national energy efficiency action plans or the national renewable energy action plans and indices show a vast potential of renewable energy and energy efficiency investments in the Arab region. Not all the countries indicated the expected cost in their indices, but the total amount for almost 8 Arab Mediterranean countries alone indicates that their mitigation costs will be more than almost 150 billion US dollar, 71%, which are conditioned by international support. Also, here I show you the performance-based contracting, the energy service company organization models. So an example from the region, for example, in Lebanon, one of the 14 initiatives of the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan in Lebanon was paving the way for energy audits and energy services company organization business to provide them with the needed financial and technical incentives. I try to resume here to catch some of the main measures taken by, in particular, the Eastern Mediterranean countries in the Arab region. In Jordan, for example, there is what we call the Jordanian National Energy Strategy 2030, which has an objective to ensure security and energy sustainability, affordability, along with increased use of domestic energy. Also, Jordan's NDC recently committed to reducing emissions from greenhouse gases by 14% by 2030. Actions included under this contribution is to be developed and use renewables and encourage investment in renewable energy projects in particular. In Iraq, for example, there is less emphasis on renewables, although the government has announced in May 2019 a plan to install almost 755 megawatt by the end of 2024. The program has been set back due to the country's economic crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. Iraq also has an objective to increase its renewable energy generation capacity from 5% to 25% by 2030. And the country needs to restructure its regulation and institutional framework to further develop the national energy markets, promote renewable energy investments, and decrease risk to attract further investors. We have been in touch recently with the Ministry of Electricity and the Ministry of Environment of Iraq, and they are in need of this kind of reforms. In Syria, in 2019, the Syrian government developed a clear strategic vision for renewable energies by adopting 2030 renewable energy strategy, which is one of the most prominent available and approved document that aims to develop a roadmap for recovery and resilience due to crisis that sweeps the country. It includes reaching the contribution of renewables to about 5% of the total primary energy in 2030 through the implementation of about 1,500 megawatt of solar photovoltaic energy and 900 megawatt of wind energy and 1.2 million solar heaters. In Lebanon, a new target aiming to meet 30% of total primary energy consumption, which include electricity and heating demand from renewables by 2030, was introduced actually 3 years ago and formed the basis of first update to electricity reform paper in March 2019. Also, I can mention that additional measures are required to scale up renewables to the level of 30% by 2030, including major adjustment to policy, regulatory, technology, infrastructure, and also the financial tools or financial mechanism. In Palestine, we're talking about an attractive renewable energy policies in place, such as the feed-in tariff for residential sector under the Palestinian Solar Energy Initiative, the net metering scheme, the direct proposal submission process, and recently the competitive bidding scheme. I can mention also existing policies allow the renewables to face energy shortage challenges, in particular in Gaza, and fostered growth in distributed generation. In Egypt, the Supreme Council of Energy in 2016 approved the Integrated Sustainable Energy Strategy for 2035, which will achieve the required energy balance in Egypt. It's been reviewed to increase the share of the renewables in the energy mix to reach more than 50% in 2035, which is one of the most ambitious in the region. During this COP, Egypt officially announced that the strategy has been revised and coal energy option has been excluded from energy mix to be replaced by renewable capacities. And as you know, the next COP will be organized in Egypt, and so we expect much more efforts in Egypt in this area. It's harmonized also with the Egyptian Sustainable Development Strategy, Vision 2030, and the different SDGs. Finally, Egypt has a different project on the supply side from other technologies as waste to energy. There has been recently a project funded by the Italian corporation, and green hydrogen. There is also a lot of focus now on green hydrogen and electrical vehicles. So those are some examples of actions taken in different Arab countries in the Eastern Mediterranean area. I will end my presentation with some key messages. There is a clear pan-Arab commitment to embrace strong forward-thinking policies and capture the immense value of the sustainable energy businesses. The market's response to the Arab region sustainable energy business has been overwhelmingly positive, demonstrating market confidence in the region, vast sustainable energy potential and investment environment. And to meet the challenge of decarbonization while ensuring energy security, taking into consideration the SDG 7, efforts must be stepped up in the Eastern Mediterranean region in the coming years toward acceleration of this energy transition process. I just wanted to also add that the energy diplomacy is definitely an important tool, I think, to be considered. You know, the number of conflicts in the region, some agreement that were stopped, and obviously energy has been used as, you know, a tool or to a resource. Between the countries in different geopolitical situations, and definitely using science and technical cooperation could really help in boosting cooperation between the countries, and also overcoming the challenges of those conflicts. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to respond to your questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jawed. Thank you for covering so much ground in 10, 12 minutes. I appreciate it. And thanks to Elif for covering energy diplomacy as well. So now we'll hear from Jennifer Lakey. We'll focus exclusively, I believe, on the demand side of energy use in Turkey.
Thank you so much for having me here today. On behalf of World Resources Institute, it's an honor to join you. I want to talk a little bit today, for those of you who don't know World Resources Institute, about our work in Turkey. WRI Turkey has an extensive program working with cities in support of sustainable development goals. And in terms of our climate activities, I'll describe some of those briefly today. We are a research institution, so as I'm describing these activities, please bear in mind that we are always eager to collaborate on work going forward and would welcome your input. So WRI and the opportunities that I'm going to be covering today are around a number of different intervention areas. Specifically, as we've covered already today, around the opportunities and need for us to manage a very thoughtful transition from fossil fuel to clean electricity, thinking about the mobility challenges and opportunities for us to improve the transportation system for all people as we electrify and move away from fossil fuels. That includes walking, cycling, and road safety. In addition, we need to think through the urban form, the compact, coordinated development opportunities, and increasing our green spaces, helping build more resilience and adaptive cities for climate, for heat, and other types of potential impacts of climate change. And finally, recognizing that public health, especially in the COVID pandemic era, has never been more important, and air quality issues are significant. In each one of these categories, WRI has worked closely to try to develop interventions and opportunities for partnerships in Turkey. That includes looking at how we improve the ability for bicycling and for public transportation. I was struck in the numbers around public health, though, and I just wanted to note that there are 19 deaths a day in Turkey as a result of auto vehicle pedestrian deaths, and that we have 13% of the deaths in Turkey are due to air quality concerns over a person's lifetime. So these are significant. So WRI is focused on data collection and enabling opportunities for collaboration around this, including looking at low carbon zones and access to affordable urban services and housing. So why and how does the demand side come together for us? And I want to talk a little bit very briefly about that suite of activities. I view it as urban energy, but it's not exclusive to urban areas. It just so happens that many of the world's people are living in cities, and I believe in Turkey that number is above 90% of urban population. So we wanted to really focus in on how to deliver for consumers the kinds of opportunities to change the way they interact with the energy system, whether that's through transportation, housing, or energy efficiency measures. We have, and I'll mention briefly, those of you in the audience are probably much more expert than I am around the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, and we talked about this a little bit already today about the importance of national energy efficiency action plans as a way of guiding policy and the private sector around where to invest, how to think about long-term plans, and where to engage in terms of the types of technology that Turkey is seeking to attract into the economy. The National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, which was set in 2017 through 2023, is aiming to reduce Turkey's primary energy consumption by 14%. And I want to relate this back to the natural gas conversations we were having at the beginning. There are two things that have to happen. One, we have to manage for clean supply, and the other is we have to manage the growth in demand. The growth in demand is critical in order to bring the services to people, and yet we have to be able to make that energy more productive. Every kilowatt hour that we are producing has to go further and meet people's needs. So how do we do that? Well, we put it together into a number of different things. And I want to highlight a couple of policy initiatives that I think have some really important opportunities. One is a presidential decree that was made in 2019 around requiring public buildings to achieve energy savings. I think it was about 15% through 2023. That kind of market signal does bring technology interest from the private sector and can put procurement, public procurement, as a means for creating the change that you want to see in the market. So we know that the implementation gaps are one of the biggest things we have to manage. There can be these kinds of commitments, the kind of opportunities that the decree does, but if the policy regulatory environment doesn't match, we don't get there. So we need to make sure that we're paying attention to those secondary regulatory processes that can actually help to make that market a viable market. So where do we go? Well, we think about the kinds of things that can change that demand-side equation, demand-side response. Now, this is largely right now in the industrial space, but in many other markets, it's also in the household space, in the household consumer space. So demand-side flexibility and having either the utility or a consumer be able to make a decision about whether they're going to pay with the utility, they'll be paid for reducing their demand. It's a significant lever for change, and it can bring forward the kind of reduction of peak load, which is often the dirtiest electricity that's on the system and on the grid. So we know that the opportunities also are around things that are much more widespread, right? So we know things like putting green spaces around roof coatings that can create reflection off of them rather than absorbing heat. So the opportunities to manage heat help decrease the electricity need in a home and keep that home more comfortable. So it's not just about the technology that we're looking at. We're looking at some of those common sense measures, the construction practices, the materials use, and those kinds of easy things like ventilation programming that makes sure that you're getting the right ventilation through a household. So the technologies are important, as are these kinds of practices and the opportunities to do practices differently. And why this matters? Because it is imperative that we view our supply and our demand side at the city level as an integrated package. But cities don't generally control the electricity that comes into their system. The energy minister, the utilities are planning for that. Yet cities have targets, and cities have ambitions for their consumers, for their citizens. And if we can match the demand of the city with the planning of the utility, we can go a lot further in reaching our goals. So as the cities are taking on their own commitments, as they're examining their climate action plans, you can see in this chart, which is from the Coalition for Urban Transitions, which WRI does with the C40 partnership, we have those that are in hash marks are those that are in the opportunities for mitigation for cities, and this is not specific to Turkey, and where the utility has to play a role. And those that are in the bold font or in the colored, the flat colors, those are where the city controls its own climate impact or climate opportunities. Buildings, as you see, are a huge opportunity, whether it's in residential buildings or in commercial buildings. But we also have to look at significantly at transport, especially because of the health implications of current diesel use. So where and how do we think about this? Well, I mean, we mentioned already the urban population and the opportunities for the retrofits of existing buildings, thinking about the incentives for renewables. One of the things that often at these forums we talk a lot about is around the utility scale renewable electricity. There's also significant opportunities, as we saw in the earlier presentation, for concentrated solar, for solar hot water heating, for other distributed renewables as well. And finally, I wanted to note that we've been doing this in collaboration with a number of cities. We have been working through a progression with several Turkish cities, from thinking about how you do building energy efficiency, which we did with the city of Eskişehir for 4 years, And now we're working on a zero carbon buildings roadmap. This is something that is funded by the Global Environment Facility, and we're working in 2 cities now, and we've just initiated these activities in Turkey, as well as in Colombia. And we're going to be we're putting together a planning process that allows for a baseline assessment, which we've been conducting already around buildings and how far we are from net zero. And looking at the policies and codes, and code compliance is always an issue, but we have to look at what the codes actually say. And then we're doing a gap analysis. What can you do to get cities and get buildings down to net zero? So that is both a national commitment that the Turkish government has made to work with us, as well as in these 2 cities. And as we go forward, that network of providers, and the panel before us was actually, one of the presentations was about glass and the opportunities and availability for energy efficient glass resources. Those are the kinds of solutions then you can pull in if you know what your target is around decarbonization in the built environment. So I'm very eager to think about this, both in terms of the buildings and what we do with the buildings, but also how buildings and the transportation infrastructure will come together over time, because we know that it's not just about buildings, it will be about how people get around from building to building. WRI in Turkey has been working significantly around, there's about 25% of total end-use energy consumption, which is going into transportation, and about 92% of that is going into, is oil and gas dependent for imports, I believe. So in fact, that agenda around getting through to decarbonization of the demand side includes electrification of the vehicle fleet, right? Thinking about this today, about 1,000 vehicles, electric vehicles, are driven in Turkey. About 2,000 of those are additional ones are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. And with growing national car ownership, we know that we have to be able to quickly move the fleet of cars that are available at a price point that consumers can take forward. That requires looking at the incentive structures and thinking about how to build out the infrastructure from the electricity side and the building side to accommodate that transition. We are eager to work in partnership and find opportunities to do this at scale with all of you and other stakeholders who are part of this broader community. And I thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, and thanks to Jawad and Elif. And I'll ask you to all put your hands together for all of them. I think these were fantastic presentations. Thank you all for that. And we have 5 minutes, and I'm afraid Jennifer has to leave on time because she has a train to catch. So if we could stick to our time slot within the next 5 minutes, the floor is yours for questions or any comments as well. Yes.
Thank you all for your presentation. Really interesting. Quick question to Jennifer in terms of... I'll start again. Thank you all for your presentation. It's really interesting. A quick question to Jennifer. In terms of the roadmap for zero carbon buildings, are you looking at sort of the operational impact there, or also the embodied carbon emissions? And maybe then a wider question to the panel in terms of the role that the building sector plays in all of that in Turkey. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's actually an excellent question. When we were doing the Building Efficiency Accelerator program, which is a network of cities that are working with us collectively around improving the energy efficiency in buildings, and there are 55 cities in 18 countries that are working with us, there was a clear interest among a number of them to start looking at embodied carbon and materials. So this Zero Carbon Building Accelerator programming will be inclusive of both operations and materials, and the embodied carbon in those materials. And I think that there are 2 things that I would say about that. And one, this field around construction materials and construction practices, I believe lags quite a ways behind our renewable energy technology investments and programming. And it's kind of the leading edge. So there are 2 things about that. One, we know we have a variety of local construction practices that can be supportive of more sustainable construction, and we have a construction industry that overbuilds often and many times, although we really have to think about how we bring those practices together and think about passive design, passive solutions in order to get to our zero carbon buildings at the lowest GHG point possible as we build. And that work is only just beginning in most major markets. Cement, steel, carbon standards don't exist for most of those materials. And we're really looking at the cutting edge of not just how do you build the demand, but then how does that demand signal get sent to the suppliers? And so we're really excited about that work. And the World Green Building Council, the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction are partners that have been looking at the same set of issues, and we're really eager to continue to look at the life cycle assessment on carbon and other sustainability metrics.
Thank you.
So my question for Dr. Jawad. Wouldn't it be much faster if the MENA region countries enact renewable energy laws instead of setting targets or strategies? So what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for your question. Actually, in all the strategies that we have set at national level, at regional level, so we need to take both directions. So at the same time, you need to improve energy efficiency in different sectors, and at the same time, so promoting investments in renewables and facilitating the right regulatory framework and financial framework, institutional framework to encourage such renewable projects. So I think the choice is not shouldn't be made that easy. We need to focus on both sides. For example, in the Gulf countries, we know that it applies also to water sector. So energy and water, the price were very cheap. So the consumption is very high per capita. I mean, one of the highest in the world. Removing and subsidizing, gradually, was something that to be done, because obviously otherwise, we are not, helping in energy efficiency measures in those countries. So the subsidizing policies were actually not encouraging, the right, the wise use of those resources. Just to tell you that, obviously both policies should be taken. It depends on the national strategy and the regional ones. So both directions should be taken together, take into consideration also the priorities. Now all the countries now are trying to build their national policies on green hydrogen. Now the future is going to be probably green hydrogen. But again, there are some still challenges. As you know, green hydrogen, through the electrolysis, we need water of high quality. So this is an issue. We are a water scarce region. So this should be probably solved in the labs, in research and innovation. But I think the way is there, and I think the effort done, and the last, events in Saudi Arabia, in UAE. So there are definitely a will to accelerate the energy transition and move forward. To commit to Paris Agreement and go towards, friendly climate action measures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi. This could be a question for any of the panelists, so whoever wants to jump in. So I'm curious about what do you foresee as the challenges in preparing for the first nuclear reactor to come online at the Koyu site, in terms of what are the challenges could be for the electric grid and electric grid resiliency. Thank you.
I'll take that one. Is that the Turkish nuclear reactor?
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of resiliency, it would be a plus for resiliency. If you take away all the risks that go with nuclear power, in terms of resilience, it's an addition. It helps stabilize the base load, and it empowers the rest of the renewable energy transition. So if anything, I do have the same reservations about nuclear as everyone else in terms of how do you dispose of the waste. But on resilience, I think you're spot on. It's a plus. If anyone else wants to chip into that,
Yeah, I agree with your comments.
Thank you. I would like to understand the net zero target of the Saudi Arabia. 2 weeks ago, one of the world's top oil exporter announced its aim to reach net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And according to you, Mr. Karim, you said that Saudi Arabia makes no plan to reduce its fossil fuel exports.
Yes, I did say that.
Yes, I know.
Several times.
I try to understand.
It's in a number of newspapers.
One side is the real fossil fuels, exporters, and
I'm happy to tackle it briefly because it's not in the East Med. But
let me finish the question, sir. One side is the most exporter fossil fuels, and on the other side, the country said that we are going on. The other side, the net zero emissions. I try to understand. Would you clarify?
I could hang around for 15 minutes and explain the whole thing to you, but according to the rules, it's completely bona fide, it's proper, and it's in their NDC. As long as they continue exporting, they'll be able to create enough energy transition that they need to move away domestically within the country from fossil fuel consumption, which is 2/3 oil and 1/3 gas in terms of electricity generation, towards more renewables. But they will only be able to do that and also reduce their energy demand once they've earned enough money through oil and gas exports to do that. So it's actually a condition. It's not just that they have no intention of moving away. They will only transition if they have enough money to do that, and that's why the condition exists. But there is a whole context to this, which I'm happy to hang around here and explain. But because Saudi Arabia is not in the Eastern Mediterranean, I'm afraid I don't want to take everyone else's time on that. Okay, I have one question to my co-panelists here, perhaps Elif and Jawad. Is there any, outside of the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum, is there any glimpse of collaboration or hope of working together that you've detected between different countries of the region, either on the energy transition on the supply side, renewables, or energy efficiency, that you think there is an opportunity that has already happened and that you can build on? Something positive.
Yeah, I can take this question. Well, now I think they realize that they did mistake by not including Turkey into this Eastern Mediterranean Forum. So Israel now show a green signal a couple of weeks ago. So probably they will make some cooperation in that regard.
Between Israel and Turkey?
Yeah, between Israel and Turkey, which is Biden government. They don't want this kind of collaboration. So on the other hand, the other thing is Greek government and Cyprus, they are really going well, and they shake hand, and they started to do another drilling exploration last week. So I think this is, well, during the pandemic, COVID-19, of course, did some limitations, but now they will continue, and we can see bright future in this region actually after this East Mediterranean Forum. But yet, unfortunately, they should do more collaboration with other countries like Libya or Syria, even Syria, and Turkey, of course, because it is all region. So.
Thank you for that tip. I should look it up.
Yeah.
Jawad, do you have any other tips about something that has...
In our organization, actually, we have 17 country members, Arab countries, actually. So one of the main objectives is to boost cooperation between those countries and exchange and encourage the exchange of know-how. We do that often. I mean, we receive requests from ministries of energy or renewable energy in a country, and we try to help an exchange. For example, recently we received a delegation from Iraq that wanted to go to Egypt or to Morocco to benefit from their experience in how to fund the renewable energy project. We try also to do the role of a facilitator, I mean, between the donors and the financial institutions and the countries to develop project or to help in funding the project. So actually we do that, exchange South-South. Recently we are also trying to somehow do a sort of benchmark of the national policies on green hydrogen. Not only to export to Europe or to Germany, but also to see the potential exactly between, for example, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, for example, close to Neom City. So there are some efforts in this regard, and we do that actually in our organization. Hopefully, we can do better and further, and despite the little political conflict that happened here and there. Yeah.
That's what we're hoping for. A little bit better than what we currently are.
Thank you. It's a very nice question.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. I think we're crossed our time by 5 minutes, and I would hope to let our panelists catch her train. So thank you all for your time, and thanks again to our panelists for making it here and for such a valuable and diverse contribution as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.